So with your analogy of evading the beach, how do you know what beach to invade? Like, how do you know if you've got a good idea, and how do you know what a good idea is? Because most people, as I said, listen to this, they've got a business idea.
Yeah.
And how do they know if it's good? And part of the issue they often have is they've heard anecdotally or they've seen that someone else is already doing it. So they go, oh
Yeah.
gosh, it's already been done.
Yeah. There's, call it, two kinds of ideas. And frankly, by the way, you think, there's over 8 billion people in the world. The fact that you think you're the one person who's thought of this idea, you may not be doing math well, right? So thinking you're the one person who's thought of the idea, that's a mistake, right? The question is, are you the person who can pull it together into momentum and pull it together? And it's still, by the way, that may be, well, okay, that gets down to 100 people. Okay, well, am I the one who's in motion right now? Am I the person who's willing to take the risk, quit my job and do it? And you never really get down to one, right? So startups are risky businesses. Like, one of the things, this gets back to entrepreneurs, like, I think the greatest chance, and even when I was starting LinkedIn, after having started SocialNet, after having, co-founded PayPal as a board member, even when I was starting LinkedIn, what I would tell the people is like, look, we have about a maximum of 20-25% chance of being successful. Right?
We are sorry to interrupt you. Before we move on to the next point, we noticed that a lot of you are returning viewers who have not subscribed. If you've enjoyed our content, subscribing would mean the world to us. It's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference for us. Thank you for your support.
Right, just to be clear, right? We're going to try to grow that to 100%, right? But we're a couple people in a garage right now, right? Like, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. Anyone who's telling you it's 100% now, they're lying to themselves or they're lying to you. And like, I'm very realist and ambitious in my strategy. And so you should never think you're starting something 100%. Now, within the ideas, you go, there's, roughly speaking, two kinds of ideas. One kind of idea is, people generally think that's a good idea. They think it's a good idea because you go to customers and customers say, yeah, I'd like that, right? They go, oh, well, hey, AI is going to create a whole bunch of new SaaS businesses, right? Oh yeah, that makes sense. A new technology transformation, right? A whole bunch of that. Or people in e-commerce, they're going to want to buy this kind of stuff. Okay, makes sense. So there's a stack of things where they're pretty measurable as ideas. Like, you can measure them with customers, you can do feedback and polling and other kinds of things. Now, there's good news, bad news on this category. The good news is you can de-risk, is there a market for your idea? Mostly. Not entirely, but mostly. The bad news is, so can a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Right? And so in this category, there always tends to be competition, and your competitive strategy, generally speaking, needs to be, why against, like, in this category, you should be expecting competition. Why am I going to win out sufficiently against this competition in a global arena? I have invested in those businesses. Greylock invests in a bunch of those businesses because we're one of the best VCs at enterprise on the planet. Blah blah blah. Then the other kind of thing, which is the one I tend to start and the one I tend to most invest in, is people think that you're crazy when you're starting your business. And by the way, and frequently you are, right?
Yeah.
But people think you're crazy, which means most people think you're crazy, which means your competitive field is a lot less, right? So, for example, I'll give LinkedIn as an example, and I'll give Airbnb as an example. So LinkedIn, I go and I say, hey, individuals will join this network and and establish a public identity and profile and bring in their network and use that, even as the vast majority of the billion people registered for LinkedIn are, basically work at companies, right? They're not starting companies. Like, it's a great platform for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs get it right away. But I'm like, well, I'm working in a company. Am I going to seem disloyal to my company if I establish a profile here?
Interesting.
Because back when we started it, like, no one's going to use that. Right.
Why?
Well, because they're worried about will their company fire them or not give them a bonus or something else because they have a LinkedIn profile because they're saying they're disloyal.
So it looks like they're shopping, because I mean,
Yes.
for most people that use LinkedIn now, you don't see it as I'm looking for another role.
Exactly.
But back then people did.
2003, literally, everyone said to me, this won't work because you're individual focused. You need to be selling products to companies.
Okay.
Right. Right. And so I was like, no, I think I'm right about the way the world can and should be. Right. And so I'm going to take that risk. And that's the contrarian risk. I'm going to take that risk and I'm going to play it forward. And if I'm right, I will create something that will transform the industry, that will be amazing for individuals, amazing for companies, et cetera. And we can go, obviously, whatever length you want to go through the LinkedIn journey, we can do that. Now, Airbnb is as an investor example. So Airbnb was my first investment at Greylock. And I was at Greylock because David Z, who was my partner, who was the Greylock partner, who was my most valuable board member at LinkedIn, convinced me that I should do venture at Greylock. And I'm very close to David. And so I bring in Airbnb as an investment, and David looks across the table from me and says, look, every VC has to have a deal they're going to fail on. Airbnb can be yours.
Really?
Yes. Because Airbnb at the time had so little volume in its transactions that the founders could have called everyone who used Airbnb that week if what they did is dedicated making phone calls, like 5 minutes of phone call, through the week. That was how small it was. And David's argument at the Greylock roundtable was, look, this is very strange. Staying in other people's houses, like the danger of something going wrong. Cities are going to hate it. Hotel lobbies are going to try to outlaw it within cities, like this is just going to be a train wreck all over the place. And I was like, no, but I want to take the bet. And he's like, great. Like, we hired you as a partner. We think you're smart. Go ahead. Right. Now, to David's credit, 6 months later, the transaction volume in Airbnb is like this classic hockey stick. It was years of very small, and then it grew to being very big. So that hockey stick hadn't started yet. And David came to me and said, okay, because like the always be learning is also useful in venture capital. He came and said, okay, you were totally right about Airbnb, and I was totally wrong. What did you see that I didn't see? Like, how did you know when I was sitting there blowing smoke at you saying this is going to be a total failure? You said, nope, I want to do this. I said, well, look, you were right about all of the risks about that could happen with Airbnb. You were absolutely right. Any of those things could have made the business worth zero. But this is the reason as investors, we do a portfolio, because yes, Airbnb could be zero, but if it worked, it was going to be huge, right? It was going to transform an industry. This is the kind of investment I like doing as an entrepreneur or as an investor. And I said, look, we had a plan for each of those risks. We had a plan A, we had plans B, we're going to try to navigate. It isn't that we could guarantee the risk, but the fact that everyone else saw those risks meant that we had years of no competition, that we could establish the network, we could establish the marketplace. And then once we're there, we are the marketplace for how that works. And that's the kind of investment I like doing. That's the same thing with LinkedIn as I founded it. Same thing with, with Airbnb as an investment. And so that category of investment, you cannot validate with the customers.
I was going to say, so if everybody thinks it's a good idea, it's probably not a big idea.
Yes, it's much more challenging to be a big idea.
Interesting. Really interesting. Because it's funny, because when people pitch to you, they say, I've asked everybody and everybody thinks it's great.
Yes.
So that's probably an indicator that it's probably not big, or they're bullshitting.
Yes. And I'm looking for, both in my creation of ideas and in my funding of ideas, it's not dumb people who think it's a bad idea. It's smart people who think it's a bad idea.
You want smart people to think.
Yes. Because then you have something that's contrarian. Because that's what contrarian is. Contrarian isn't, I don't understand technology at all, and I think it's a terrible idea. It's like, well, who cares? You don't understand anything, right? It's smart people who think it's a bad idea, right? And then you have a theory of the game that's a good one, not perfect, can be very risky, about why they're wrong. So I'll give you the LinkedIn example. Literally, John Lilly, partner of mine at Greylock, I recruited him into Greylock later. He was the CEO of Mozilla that I was on the board of. super smart guy, friend of mine. I sat down with him about LinkedIn because this is how I go when I'm starting a company. I go to all my smartest friends and I go, here's what I'm doing. What's wrong with it? I don't want to have the conversation with them go, oh, it's great. Useless. Doesn't help me. Right? What's wrong with it? Why will this go? Why will this fail? And so I sat down with John. We had breakfast at a breakfast place in Silicon Valley. I said, da da da. And he said, okay, look, I'm your friend. It's never going to work. Right? And I said, okay, well, why do you think it's never going to work? He said, well, look, you'll never grow the network. Like the first person who comes in, no one else in the network, not valuable for me. Why should I invite someone in? Until you have I don't know, 500,000 people, 1 million people, there's no value in the network. So there's zero value. So it's never going to grow. You're never going to get anywhere, right? And it was a very smart, perspicacious thought that was probably the key thing for starting LinkedIn was, how do you get to millions of people in the network? Because that's the only place where the value proposition kicks in, right? I knew that if you had 1,000 people come in, 900 of those people would be exactly like John. They'd go, I don't see anyone else here in this network, etc. But I knew that some of them, somewhere between 10 and 100 of them, would go, oh, I see what this could be, and I kind of want to play with it. So, I'll invite Steven, I'll invite some people in. And then as it very slowly starts going, then all of a sudden there's enough people in, it's interesting, it's curious, and you could grow to being valuable. So I knew that by persistence through those initial exploratory people who are curious, people who want to experiment with it, people who got the vision of it, et cetera, that all of that, I could grow to your initial critical mass, and then it would kick in.
What do you guys think? Do guys think crazy ideas can actually turn out to be a moonshot? Please leave your comment below. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you for making it this far. If you like this video, you might want to share it with a like-minded friend. Thank you, and as always, stay blessed.